everybody, it's me, Tegan. I'm back. It is now July, it's the beginning of July, and at the beginning of the year, I gave myself a goal of reading 50 books by the end of the year. This was a crazy goal. It didn't make any sense because it's been a long time since I've read for pleasure. I've read 73 books and we are only halfway through, so I think that I am definitely doing well with my challenge for myself, and if I continue, I will have read a lot more by the end of the year. So I'm super stoked about that. And because I've been reading so many books, I decided that I wanted to do sort of a mid-year top 10. So I'm going to share with you my top 10 books for 2016 so far. Now, all of these have come out in 2016. It's just that I've read them in 2016, so that's when. So I'm counting them for this year. Without further ado, my top book is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. Honestly, Cassandra Clare, everything that she puts out just gets better and better for me. Lady Midnight is the first book in the Dark Artifices series. It follows Emma Carstairs and her parabatai Julian Blackthorn. Emma has trained her ass off in order to become like the best and brightest Shadowhunter of her age, and she has no special extra powers. It's just that she has trained so hard for this, which is super rad. She's trying to avenge her parents' deaths, and it's just great. I thought this was great because Emma was badass, and I loved that we had some Malik and some Jessa in there because those are like my two main ships. But now I'm like a Emma Julian fan. There's drama between Emma and Julian and like falling in love, and is that okay? Since they're parabatai, it's not okay. And I just feel like with this series, Cassandra Clare is gonna rip my heart into a million pieces, and I'm going to die a little bit at the end of it. So this book really slapped me in the face, and I loved it, and I had a hangover for days. You can ask Nicole, I would not shut up about it, so A+. The second book that is in my top 10 is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Sarah J. Maas, I was just introduced to her this year. I read all of the Throne of Glass books so far, and I've read the 2 in this series. She's my favorite author right now. I'm such a fangirl, it's ridiculous. I can't believe I'd never heard of her before. I don't know, I was living under a rock, like whatever. I feel like her female characters are completely badass. They completely shatter the damsel in distress trope, which I'm so tired of. In A Court of Mist and Fury, we have Feyre. She's back. She's like suffering from PTSD from her time under the mountain and being tortured and ultimately making horrible sacrifices in order to save Tamlin. And then after an almost wedding, a disastrous almost wedding, she is saved by reason and whisked away to the Night Court, and Feyre begins to realize that not everything and everyone is as it seems, and she begins to focus on learning how to utilize her powers in order to save the world all over again. I love Feyre. I think she's amazing. Oh my god, I love her so much, and I love Sarah J. Maas. Like, bless, you're the best ever. I love you. The next book I have, and I actually have a copy of it, and I chose Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas again, and the reason I chose this one was because it's the last of the Throne of Glass series. It's available right now. There's another one coming out next year, I think. I'm not sure. I hopped on this boat really late. And actually, this isn't my favorite from the series so far. My favorite is Heir of Fire, but I'm not really going to get too far into this series in case you haven't read it. But basically, I'll talk a little bit about Throne of Glass. Selena Sardothian she is an assassin who's been imprisoned, and she goes to become the king's assassin. She's got to fight all these other questionable people and try to get her place as a king's assassin so that she can eventually win her freedom. She comes from a place of like pain and suffering, and the way that she holds herself and acts and is able to function in everyday situations is just insane to me. But I love her, and this series is just A+. Heir of Fire is my favorite, but I can't wait to read the rest. Number 4 is a book that I am incredibly excited about. I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. It's Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things by Martina McAtee. It's insane that I haven't heard of it before. So basically, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. If you love Cassandra Clare and you love her Shadowhunter world, you will love Martina McAtee's books. So Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things is sort of like that, but it's like a whole book about like the downworlders, so like the monsters. The first novel, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, it features a diverse cast of werewolves, reapers, fae, witches, and various other fairy tale monsters, each with a personality more colorful than the last. Honestly, every single character has such a strong personality and is so different and individual that it was insane to me. Basically, we're following the main character, Ember, as she's coming to terms with her new life and the idea that she might not actually be human, which, like, who doesn't love a story like that? Somebody who doesn't know what they were and is thrust into this dark underground. Her second book comes out July 15th, and it's called Dark Dreams and Dead Things. I reviewed the arc. It's available on my blog. I would check that out. Winter by Marissa Meyer. Marissa Meyer. It's in the Lunar Chronicles. Again, I just chose this one because it's the last one that I read. But really, Cinder's probably my favorite of this series, but I read all of them this year. I love everything Disney, and I love everything fairy tales, and I'm obsessed with strong female characters. I've said that like a million times in this video alone. Cinder is great. I love her. She's a mechanic, which I just love that about her. She is part cyborg, which is so rad. Like, are you serious? I never liked the story of Cinderella until I read Cinder. And after I read Cinder, it sort of started this huge, like, I need to read everything Cinderella. I need to watch all the adaptations. Like, oh my god, I was obsessed. It just started me on this roller coaster. And the Lunar Chronicles were so awesome. I love space opera. If you know anything about me, you know that I love space opera. So these were so good. So good. This next book is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. The very first book that I read this year was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and I've finished the series so far. The reason I'm not pulling up The Raven King right now as my favorite book is because it wasn't. This is my favorite book in the series. The Dream Thieves. I absolutely loved it, and I think that's because Ronan Lynch is my favorite character. I feel like all of the books should have been from his point of view. No offense to Blue, I do appreciate her. I think she's pretty cool, but Ronan just stole the show for me. Dream Thieves is when I really became obsessed with this series, and I tried to read Shiver before, and I really hated it. I couldn't get through it, couldn't get through the first book. Probably got like a quarter of the way in and didn't finish it. So I was a little bit weary of starting another by Maggie Stiefvater, but this series completely changed my mind about her. I didn't connect to that first series, but I loved this one. The only thing I didn't love was the ending. The Raven King I felt was like a little bit of a cop-out, and I could be wrong, but I had just gone through the whole series thinking that something was gonna happen, and even though it did, it felt like a cop-out, and I'm not really gonna get into it because it's a relatively new book and I don't want to spoil it for people, but I really just hated the ending. I just didn't think it did the series justice at all. But up until the ending, I freaking loved it, and I love the Raven Boys, especially Ronan. Number 7, I'll Give You the Sun by Jenny Nelson. This book was crazy because I hate contemporary for the most part. I really don't like it, like, at all. I need to have some kind of fantasy, some kind of sci-fi going on, but I picked this up. I didn't know what it was. I did a blind date with the book. I have a review for it up on here. And the very first page, I mentioned this earlier, is featuring a 13-year-old boy, and I was like, oh my god, if I have to read from the perspective of a 13-year-old boy, I am not gonna make it through this book. But I was wrong. This was so good. So this book follows twins Jude and Noah as they navigate adolescence and the stresses of falling in love, experiencing heartache, dealing with loss, things like that. So Noah is narrating events that took place between the ages of 13 and 14. He's creative, he's whimsical, soft-hearted, he's a sweetheart. He's also dealing with the fact that he is gay, and issues with first love and heartache. And there's no real like big gay panic in here, which is really why I appreciate it. I think it's really done well, the way his sexuality is handled. And then Jude, his sister, narrates events that take place around the age of 16. So Jude spends a lot of her narrative punishing herself for past mistakes she made, but she begins to grow and learns to create things instead of break them down. It starts focusing on the twins as a single entity, and it follows them as they break apart and sort of begin their own stories and grow their own personalities, which is really interesting because as they grow their own personalities and they split apart, they also become closer, I feel. And it's just a really cool concept, and everything ties together at the end, and it's so perfect. It's so well done. I will be grabbing everything by Janie Nelson from now on. I read The Skies Everywhere not that long ago. I also really loved that, so good job. This next book I forgot to grab, but it is Welcome to Night Vale by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner. I have been obsessed with this podcast for many years. I used to work at a fast food job and I was a closer, and I would just put in my headphones after we closed and just listen to the podcast on repeat because it was just the best thing that I had ever heard, and I loved it so much. I was both excited and horrified at the prospect of a book. I knew that I was gonna buy it and try to read it, but I didn't know if I would like it. I was afraid it would be like clunky and kind of lose the mystery and the pizzazz that the podcast has. But I was wrong. Surprisingly, happily wrong. Welcome to Night Vale captures the voice of Night Vale, and it holds you tight as it navigates you through like these twists and turns of the crazy city of Night Vale and its residents. It focuses on Jackie Fierro, who is forever 19 years old. She's the owner of the local pawn shop. And it also focuses on Diane Creighton, who is Night Vale's PTA treasurer, as their worlds kind of flip upside down and then collide. They're forced to come together in their search for the man in the tan jacket. If you've listened to the podcast, you know what I'm talking about. He is the only one with the answers to their problems. They figure that out and then they go on a search for him. I have to say that if I hadn't been a fan of the podcast, I'm not sure how I would have felt about the book. I think I would have... it's a delightful book. I think I would have been interested, but I feel like also it might be a little bit confusing to get into that voice, to get into that mindset. So I don't know. If you haven't listened to the podcast and you've read that, like, let me know in the comments below how you felt about that when you were reading it. Was it confusing? I don't know. This next book, Oh, the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I love historical fiction. I always love it. This one is a World War II novel. It focuses on Marie-Laure, who's this young girl who lives with her locksmith father in Paris. When she's 6 years old, she loses her sight and needs to learn how to function. So her father built her this replica of the city that she can feel with her hands, and then he begins to teach her how to get around, and it's really impressive. When Marie-Laure is 12, her city is invaded, and she and her father are forced to flee in order to survive. But there's one catch. They may or may not be hoarding a dangerously valuable jewel, and they are hunted for it. It also focuses on Werner, who's this brilliant orphan who grows up in Germany, inventing and building radios. He's recruited by the Hitler Youth and taken to the academy where he learns to become a tracker of the resistance. He eventually ends up in St. Malo, where Marie-Laure is hiding, and they collide. I love this book because it not only focused on children growing up in times of war, but it showed the horrors for children on both sides. Mist and Whispers by C.M. Lucas. This book was crazy. It was published by F. Toombs Publishing, and if you haven't heard of Benjamin F. Toombs and you're into the booktube world, definitely check him out. I'm sure you have heard of him already. He's pretty popular. He does great reviews. This book, Mist and Whispers, was crazy. It has everything. It's got fantasy, it's got book-loving protagonists, magic, mythical creatures, danger, distress, loss, friendship, and bravery. It's got, like, just, it's crazy. The list is endless. So it's about this girl named Anya. She and her friends embark on this accidental quest to save her favorite bookstore, where she's kind of grown up. She's an orphan, so she's lived in a home. Bookstore, we find, is her only connection to her mother, who left her at the bookstore when she was an infant. While they're on this accidental quest, they accidentally stumble upon more magic than they know what to do with. There are multiple worlds, tons of mythical creatures, such as vampire leeches, which was a really gross concept, and loads of magical elements. And even though there was so much going on, I was never overwhelmed or confused. I think it was a great first book to what is going to be an awesome trilogy. So anyway, that was my top 10 books of this first half of this year, and then I'll do a top 10 of the last half, and maybe a top 10 of like all through the year. I don't know, because books keep getting bumped up and down on this list, so we'll see how it goes. I'm going to know in the comments what your favorite book so far this year has been. So let me know why, and why I should read it, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.